This summer, Instacart is bringing back your favorites from 1999 with prices from 1999. That means 90s prices on juice pouches that ought to be respected, 90s prices on box mac and cheese, and 90s prices on ham, cheese, and cracker lunches. Enjoy all those throwbacks and more at throwback prices, only through Instacart. $4.72 maximum discount per $10 of eligible items. Limit one offer per order. Expires September 5th while supplies last. Discount based on CPI comparison.
It's Saturday the 12th of July. I'm Mike Wooler and this was a week that saw French President Macron visit the UK, no signs of progress in Gaza or Ukraine, Texas battered by flash floods, and Christian Horner out at Red Bull.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
Last weekend marked 1 year of Keir Starmer's Labour Party in government, and it's been a mixed bag so far. While polling numbers have been poor, there have been some progress in the cost of living crisis, but the disastrous wrestling match with Labour backbenchers over the welfare bill cast a shadow over any celebrations. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson was warning that the welfare bill rebellion will have knock-on impacts on the budget.
It will be the moral mission of this Labour government to lift children out of poverty. It does come at a cost, and that's why, in keeping with our fiscal rules, we do need to make sure that we have a strong foundation for the economy. We make sure we get this right. These ultimately will be matters that the Chancellor has to consider right across the board.
Labour has been second to reform in most polls, though Keir Starmer remains more popular than Nigel Farage. But it's hardly the ideal time for an announcement that Labour rebels are keen to set up their own party. Suspended Labour MP Zara Sultana says she is in discussion with former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn about co-chairing a new party. But another former Labour leader, Lord Kinnock, didn't sound too impressed.
Well, I understand they're having a bit of difficulty over thinking up a name. In a comradely way, I'd suggest one. It would be the Farage Assistance Group.
There was some good news for the government on Monday as a new independent impact assessment of the changes to the welfare bill suggests that the changes will now see 50,000 people lifted out of poverty. Chancellor Rachel Reeves still has to recalibrate the budget to cope with the loss of potential savings. Monday also saw the government move to reform the EHCP system, that's the Educational Health and Care Plans, which give pupils who need it access to special educational support. It's estimated that almost 5% of pupils now have EHCPs and they're the next target for the government's reforms. Education Minister Stephen Morgan was quizzed over plans to amend rules on special educational needs or disabilities.
It's absolutely right that we work really hard to reform the system to make sure it works for every child. We want to make sure there's good quality, inclusive mainstream education available for all children. That's what our focus is on delivering.
Labour MP Peter Swallow says the current system is far too complicated and difficult for families to understand.
Lots of families are finding that they effectively have to become lawyers or full-time advocates for their kids just to get them the essential support that they need. And that's why it's so important that we reform the system.
Tuesday saw a new report on childhood poverty describe children living in almost Dickensian levels of poverty and sparked fresh calls for a scrapping of the 2-child benefit cap. Dame Rachel de Souza is the Children's Commissioner and she says she's increasingly alarmed about the level of hardship that children are facing. The report describes children not having enough water to shower, mouldy bedrooms and even rats biting through the walls. Worst of all, she says, it's forcing children to deal with adult issues and giving them worryingly low expectations of what they should be entitled to.
I was shocked. I have always just tried to really not be someone who's kept this and just listen to children. And over 4 years, it really has got a lot worse.
There were no tears this week at Prime Minister's Question Time, but the repercussions of the changes to the welfare bill were still ringing out in the chamber. Labour are under pressure to make up for the lost savings and penned in by their promises not to raise taxes. New polling from YouGov suggests that 75% of people are in favour of a wealth tax, though, with the example of a 2% levy on those worth over £10 million gaining traction. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch didn't sound keen on the idea, however.
This is a tax on all of our constituent savings, on their houses, on their pensions. It would be a tax on aspiration.
Mr. Fitchie says we shouldn't be asking them for advice on the economy. She's absolutely right about that. We will not be asking for their advice.
And if you thought the days of pickets and placards were behind us, I'm afraid you're going to have to think again. The junior doctors are planning to head back on strike, though they are now known as resident doctors. They're unhappy with a proposed government pay deal and plan to walk out on July the 25th for 5 days. They've received an average of more than 28% pay rise over the last 3 years and were offered 5% this year. But they're claiming more than 20% is due because of long-term pay reductions. Health Secretary Wes Streeting was unimpressed.
In the history of British trade unions, there is not a precedent for a trade union to respond to a pay award of 28.9% with any strike action, let alone 5 days. This is unreasonable and unnecessary.
French President Emmanuel Macron arrived in Britain on Tuesday for the first official state visit of a European leader since Brexit. He got the full red carpet treatment, including a state visit with the King at Windsor Castle and a state banquet on Tuesday night. King Charles spoke in both English and French and was at pains to emphasise the historic bonds between the two nations and the importance of working together on issues like migration and Ukraine. Macron also addressed Parliament and was focused on Russia's increasingly brutal attacks on Kyiv.
Because every time Vladimir Putin's Russia advances in Ukraine, the threat moves closer to us all. We will never accept the theory that might is right. This is why together, the Europeans will never abandon Ukraine. Never.
The third day of Macron's official state visit to the UK saw a focus on the thorny issue of cross-channel migration and greater cooperation between the two nations. A working meeting at Downing Street saw commitments to coordinate British and France's nuclear deterrence, allowing a joint mobilisation in the event of an attack, along with cooperation on anti-ship missiles and improved collaboration on things like supercomputers and AI. The most significant item from a political point of view is a new pilot scheme on migration that will see a one-in, one-out deal, which will see people crossing on small boats returned, which Prime Minister Keir Starmer says will help to meet Labour's promise of smashing the smuggling gangs.
The first thing to appreciate is this is groundbreaking. This is a scheme intended to break the model and to make it clear that if you cross in a small boat, then you'll end up where you started.
In exchange for France accepting the return of those illegally crossing, the UK will now accept asylum seekers who have passed security checks. French President Macron was pleased with the new deal and not afraid to mention the elephant in the room.
Many people in your country explained that Brexit would make it possible to fight more effectively against illegal immigration, but it's in fact since Brexit that the UK has no migratory agreement with the EU. In fact,
this week at the White House saw plenty of focus on tariffs, but little progress on peace in either Gaza or Ukraine. Monday saw the US president back to his tariff war, with August the 1st identified as the new tariff date. And rather than coming to individual agreements, they've just started firing out letters to countries on social media. South Korea and Japan were the first two up, both receiving 25% tariffs, unless they move their production to the US.
I'm saying here it is. Congratulations. Welcome to the United States. I hope you make a lot of money and you're going to pay us money. They were ripping us. They were charging us tariffs at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We have some countries who are charging 200% tariffs.
Israeli PM Netanyahu was visiting the White House to discuss the possible 60-day ceasefire with Hamas. The negotiating teams in Qatar have been working on, but there was no sign of progress. Instead, he announced that he'd nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize.
I want to present to you, Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee. It's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well-deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know.
The week has been marked by increasingly brutal attacks by Russia on Ukraine, with ever-increasing numbers of drones and missiles fired at Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. It's become difficult for the Ukrainian air defences to cope, and this week saw the cancellation and then reinstatement of US arms shipments to Ukraine, which has left the world confused as to where US President Trump stands on the conflict. He's been slow to move on sanctions on Russia, but it does sound like his view on Russian President Putin is beginning to shift.
We get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
This week saw a number of inquiries deliver reports, most of which focused on historical scandals and successive government failures to deliver compensation for victims. Tuesday saw the first volume of the report into the Post Office Horizon IT scandal published. The report, which is at 162 pages long, looked at the disastrous human impact the scandal had on the post office operators who were blamed for shortfalls caused by faulty software. Sir Wyn Williams, the retired judge who chaired the inquiry, said that it's crucial that the government take action to deliver full and fair compensation.
The picture which has emerged is profoundly disturbing. Many thousands of people have suffered serious financial detriment. Many people have, inevitably, suffered emotional turmoil and significant stress in consequence.
His report also found that at least 13 people had killed themselves as a result of the scandal, and that it had a disastrous human impact on thousands more. He recommended that those affected should be offered free legal advice to help assess their claims. Jo Hamilton is a former sub-post mistress and now an OBE, and she says the delays in providing compensation cannot go on.
I cannot believe the length of time this whole process takes. I think it's 350 people are dead now that have been part of this mess, and 100 people from the GLO group that have passed away before getting redress, and it's just wicked.
Tuesday also saw a public inquiry get underway into the murder of 3 young girls in Southport in July 2024. The murders shocked the nation as Axel Rudakabana burst into a Taylor Swift-themed dance class and stabbed multiple children and 2 adults, killing a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. He's since been jailed for at least 52 years, but the purpose of the inquiry under Sir Adrian Fulford is to examine how what was described as Rudakabana's deteriorating and deeply troubling behaviour was handled by public bodies. The inquiry began with a moment's silence and a reminder of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's words that Southport must be a line in the sand, and reiterated that nothing is off the table in this inquiry.
However hard we try, ordinary language simply fails to reflect the enormity of what he did, and I'm not going to try and then fail to find them.
Wednesday saw the government facing more criticism for its failure to pay compensations to the victims of a national scandal. This time it was the infected blood scandal, with a new report published by the inquiry chair, Sir Brian Langstaff. The scandal saw over 30,000 people receive blood products that caused the disease and the death of at least 3,000 victims. Wednesday's report urged the government to heed the voices of victims and avoid repeating the mistakes of the past.
For decades, people who suffered because of infected blood have not been listened to. Once again, decisions have been made behind closed doors, leading to obvious injustices.
Nick Thomas-Symonds is the Paymaster General, and he said that over 2,000 people have now been invited to start their claims process, and that the last thing he wants is any further delays.
When I came into this job, I had a report on my desk with 75 recommendations for changing this scheme, of which I accepted 69. My priority is to ensure that we're not creating even further delay after decades of injustice.
Still to come on the Standout 7 in association with Metro. Shock news at Red Bull and Black Sabbath bow out.
Right after this.
Ready to elevate your everyday? Quince has the luxe staples insiders swear by, minus the markup. From 100% European linen styles and 14-karat gold jewelry to gorgeous leather bags and elevated home finds, Quince has it all. And by partnering directly with top artisans and ethical factories, Quince delivers premium quality at half the cost of similar brands. Discover everyday luxury without the markup at Quince. Go to quince.com/style upgrade for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/style upgrade.
Welcome back.
Central Texas was hit by devastating flash floods last weekend, which saw at least 120 people killed and many more, including young girls, still missing. Rescue workers have pledged to continue until everyone is found, and Texas Governor Greg Abbott has declared a disaster and mobilized state resources to help. A Christian summer camp called Camp Mystic along the banks of the Guadalupe River is the focus of the search, where 5 girls, mostly under the age of 12, are still missing. The river rose over 20 feet in the space of an hour, and flood warnings appear to have been issued too late. Rick Spinrad, a former official at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, says recent budget cuts have impacted the Weather Service.
Without research, without staff to do the work, we can assume that the predictions, and not just hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, drought, wildfires, tsunamis, for that matter, are undoubtedly going to degrade. And that means that people's ability to prepare for these storms will be compromised.
The White House pushed back strongly on accusations that recent budget cuts had left the US Weather Service understaffed and late to provide warnings. There was criticism, too, of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's response to the crisis, as the Federal Emergency Management Agency, known as FEMA, has also been hampered by budget cuts. US Senator Ted Cruz, who represents Texas, says the state has been stunned by the events.
Texas is grieving right now. The pain, the shock of what has transpired these last few days has broken the heart of our state. The children, the little girls who were lost at Camp Mystic. That's every parent's nightmare.
There was a dramatic announcement in Formula One on Wednesday as Red Bull announced that team principal Christian Horner was released from his operational duties, effective immediately. He's been in charge of the team for over 20 years, winning 8 drivers' championships and 6 constructors, but has been dogged by complaints and inquiries for the last 18 months. He's being replaced by Frenchman Laurent Mekies, who is promoted from the Racing Bulls team. Horner later posted "Lost my job" on Snapchat, and a video of his farewell speech to the staff at Red Bull's Milton Keynes factory went viral. Longtime F1 commentator Martin Brundle was a bit emotional about the news.
I'm quite sad about it, if I'm honest. I consider Christian a friend, and he's done an incredible job there for 20 years. Won an awful lot of races and world championships. But, it's not been difficult to feel in the Formula One paddock and to observe and to hear that things were not particularly rosy.
Last Saturday saw Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath officially retire with a massive gig in Birmingham. 40,000 fans packed into Villa Park for a day-long metal festival, with acts including Metallica, Guns N' Roses and supergroups, which saw performances from Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins and the Rolling Stones' Ronnie Wood. Ozzy himself appeared on stage despite his Parkinson's diagnosis, performing from a black and purple throne as the metal legends bid farewell to their home fans. Former Van Halen vocalist Sammy Hagar was among those paying tribute.
There's not another guy as respected in metal as Ozzy Osbourne. And for him to be sick and not be, and to be saying, I'm out, I'm done, man, there's no one else that can replace that.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes and we'll give you the world.
There's nothing better than treating yourself, except maybe treating yourself to high-end, top-quality pieces at half the cost. That's what Quince is all about. From European linen apparel starting at just $30 to handbags crafted from the finest Italian leather, Quince can elevate an everyday outfit at a fraction of the price. By working directly with top artisans and cutting out the middlemen, Quince gives you luxury pieces without the markup. Go to quince.com/style for everyday affordable luxuries with free shipping and 365-day returns.